Of those precursors, Customs tell me there's evidence to suggest we have managed to contain the supply of methamphetamine, and recent surveys indicate fewer people are now using it. By reducing the amount of precursors coming across the border, sir, we prevent millions of dollars of harm to this nation.
Question number 12, Andrew Williams.
To the Minister of Finance. Is reducing the current account deficit a priority for the government?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, this is one part of the government's wider program to reduce New Zealand's longest-standing external imbalances, which have built up over 3 or 4 years. The government has taken a number of steps to encourage New Zealanders to live within their means and save more, because ultimately it is the behaviour of New Zealanders who determine the extent of our current account deficit. We are making progress. Household savings are significantly positive for the first time in 20 years, and New Zealanders are paying down debt. But there is some long way yet to go, with New Zealand households being among the most indebted in the developed world.
Andrew Williams.
Supplementary. How can he say it is a priority when the current account deficit is forecast to double from about $8 billion to $16 billion over the next 4 years?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as the member may be aware, you can't target the current account deficit in the same way as you can, for instance, target the deficit in the government's accounts. We can decide to spend less and raise more tax, but we can't independently make New Zealand households and businesses behave differently than they have for the last 30 years. The current account deficit at the moment is around 4.9%, much lower than the 3-year average of over 8% in the last term of the last Labor government. So the critics of the current account deficit had a much worse deficit when they had 9 years to get on top of it.
Andrew Williams.
Supplementary to the Minister. What impact could a 20% decline in national income from milk solids, as forecast in the annual farm monitoring report released today, have on the current account deficit during the same 4-year period?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, that wouldn't help. It would be better for New Zealand if its national income was rising rather than falling, which is why it's important that we look after the productive capacity of our dairy industry. We can't have it both ways. We can't reduce our current account deficit on the one hand and then run with opposition parties' policies, which are essentially to try and shut down the dairy industry. That will make the current account deficit a lot worse.
Andrew Williams.
Supplementary to the Minister. Given the big 4 Australian banks made a combined profit of $3 billion in the 2011 financial year, has the government considered ways to improve banking competition in New Zealand and reduce the amount of profit being repatriated overseas?
The Honourable Prime Minister. The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the current competitive rules for the banking sector are about as open as we think they can be. Bear in mind that for small open economies that are really in trouble are those who have had banking problems and banking collapses, and Ireland being the most obvious example, but there are others. It's our view that having reasonably strong banks at this time is actually good for the economy. It enables businesses and households to be able to continue to borrow money. The government's focus with respect to banking at the moment is to introduce the open bank resolution process, which will reduce the likelihood that taxpayers would have to bail out any bank that got in trouble.
Andrew Williams.
Supplementary to the Minister. Given the cost to New Zealand of international freight being in the order of $5 billion a year, what specific recommendations is the government considering with respect to the recent Productivity Commission report into international freight as a way of improving the balance of payments?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, that is a very good question, and the government is considering the report of the Productivity Commission. Their recommendations covered a range of areas, including competition rules among shipping lines and the impact of local government ownership on efficiency of ports. The government will pick up whatever recommendations it believes can make a difference to competitiveness, and I'm pleased the member is focusing on those issues, because it is exactly those less glamorous, more complex issues that are the key to improving our competitiveness. There is no other free lunch with the current account.
That concludes questions for oral answer, and we move to... You have a point of order? No. We move to questions to members. Denise Roche.
Thank you, Mr.